Hey there, card fighters. It's Alejandro of Team Midheaven here, bringing you another brand new deck profile. Our last trial deck profile really popped off, and we had a few people requesting us to try to find ways to build all of the trial decks competitively. Now, I will say there is new support that's coming out in set 7. Of course, we're not going to get that for a while. So these are how to build the decks currently. And I will say, as I continue to these deck profiles, I know they are not the most budget friendly. There's going to be a couple of cards in here that are going to be kind of pricey, not as pricey as like the Heater Sanctuary Roswell one. And of course, there's always going to be budget options, but the point of these deck profiles is to see like what cards can we like put in the deck that could, if you had the chance to like choose any card, like maybe you already own these cards, to kind of push these decks as the hardest and like strongest that they possibly can at like this current moment. And of course, as a disclaimer, you're not going to be able to run a regional with these kind of things, but you might be able to do pretty well at locals, and they're also just genuinely really fun to play. I'm a huge fan of the trial decks, and I'm really having fun like trying to figure them out and how to like build them properly, and even testing them against decks that are considered extremely high tier in this format. And before I get into the deck profile, I just want to thank you guys for helping us hit over 700 subscribers. We managed to hit that goal and then some before the end of the year. And maybe in the next few months, we can end up hitting like 800 up to 1,000 and become a YouTube partner. So if you're watching this video, you know, if you like the content, be sure to like, subscribe, comment on the video to help us with the algorithm and help us continue to grow. And we'll be able to bring you more deck profiles plus more lore and art videos, because the lore videos and lore fights are obviously like my favorite part. So we'll try to figure out what we're going to go into the next year of 2025. So let's go ahead and get into it. As far as your ride line goes, as far as I know, and I'm not an expert on Dark States, but I don't think there's like a good generic ride line that, because this deck doesn't need to just shove a bunch of cards into Soul like some like Barrow Magnus does. It's not as important. You just need like a few select cards in Soul at a time to do your combos. So I do quite like this ride line. When the grade 1 is rode upon by the grade 2, you just soul charge 2 and it picks up 5k. And then when you ride your grade 3 Oselargest specifically over the grade 2, you get to draw a card as long as you have 4 cards at soul, which you will because you soul charged. So it's pretty simple. These two do have a rearguard skill. The grade 1, I don't really feel like it'll be extremely relevant, but if you have a grade 3 of those largest, it's a plus 5k, 13k booster, and then the grade 2 will pick up 10k shield. This could end up being a unit that you can call out with Oselargest's skill, which I'll get to in just a second. And it becomes a 15k interceptor, so it's a good way to like, you know, get easy defense without having to use cards early, especially in these like more low powered decks. And then of course the main man himself, Cruel Beast Demonic Lord Oselargest. Just like the other trial decks, he has a skill that says Counterblast 1, search your deck for 1 card with the same name as him and reveal it, put in hand, and then it gets plus 10,000 power till end of turn. And then his main gimmick is that when he attacks a Vanguard, you can Energy Blast 4, choose a grade 3 less card from your soul, call it to rearguard circle, and it gets 10,000 power till the end of turn. So very similar to like the Keter deck where Sarazel calls a card from the drop and it gets 10k. All of them pretty much have that same skill besides Oshterm, which will just restand the rearguard and give both of those units power. Whereas with Oselargest, Sarazel, Miriam, those three specifically, they're going to call a card and give it 10,000 power. So they have some very similar ideas and similar deck building rules that I kind of gave as I go throughout. So let's go ahead and get into the grade 3s. Of course, you're going to play 3 Persona rides. They're just kind of, you know, important for power, but also this is the only trial deck that actually gets to use its like main grade 3 attacker skill constantly over and over, because the cost to do it is just a Soul Blast and Oselargest from Soul, and you're able to just recycle that in there is constantly possible. And I'll get into some combos kind of close to the end as I go to the units. But this is Telegan right here. He is your main grade 3 attacker. When he's put onto Soul from rearguard circle, if you have a grade 3 or greater Oselargest in its card name, you can Soul Blast 2 cards of different grades to draw a card. And then when he attacks, you can Soul Blast a card, give it 5k, and if you Soul Blast a grade 3 or greater with Oselargest in its name, it gets plus 15k instead of the 5k. So he can actually get kind of big, and because you're able to just put cards into Soul constantly with the deck, either from drop or like soul charging, you do see the Oselargest quite often, and you're able to, even while your opponent's on grade 2, you're able to get that plus 15k, making like some kind of unguardable numbers like pretty early on and repeatedly, and drawing quite a bit. The main issue that this guy had was that you really only had 1 card up until recently to put him into Soul, and it was like awkward. It was a grade 2 that you need to see. It was like your alternate attacker, and its skill was Counterblast, put a card into Soul, then draw a card. So you would draw 2 cards from that combo, but it was effectively a like Counterblast, Soul Blast 2 to draw a 2 and put him in, and you of course would need to see that, and if you didn't, he was just kind of a dead card. But we got a new card recently, the grade 1 promo that I'll get into and go to the grade 1s, that its skill actually puts it into Soul at the end of battle, and you're able to recur it extremely consistently. So that is as it for grade 3s. Then with your grade 2s, this is the cycle unit. This is what I meant by like some cards are going to be expensive. I really only think this deck needs 2 cycle units, and it's just because with the promo, you're able to like once, twice, maybe 3 times how long the game is going, you're able to Energy Blast 3 periodically, because I think with this deck, you're never going to be able to Energy Blast 7. Like with Vanguard, he has the Energy Blast 4 to call a unit, but you might get to a point where you just have like 7 energy, and you're only Energy Blasting 4, so you're never really able to do anything otherwise. I guess you could always look into like budget options of different cards that like Energy Blast 3 resolve a different effect. Like there is some grade 1s out there that say like when they boost, you can Energy Blast 3 and Counter Blast 1 to like draw a card and they get power. So there are different ways that you can make use of it, but I just think having a little bit of hand cycle, while it's not a main card you want to discard and write up, it's still nice to have because you're replacing itself. I think it's Persona Ride skill, which is on place. You pay the cost, you soul charge 1, and it gets plus 5k in boost. It's just like very okay. Especially with this deck, you don't need a lot of cards in Soul. Maybe like in a moment to moment, maybe you're running out of resources because you're using the draw effects quite a bit. But the one downside of this deck is that the longer the game goes, it does have the chance to deck out. So that's one thing you got to be careful with. That's why I don't think you don't need to soul charge as much as like other Dark Saints decks might require you, like Barrow, even though it's very similar to that. Then you have Skillful Entertainer. This is actually one of the Oselargest cards that came out in set 4. He is probably one of the freest soul fillers in all of Dark Saints. On place on Rearguard Circle, doesn't care whether it's from soul or hand, does not matter. You Carry Blast 1, if you have a grade 3 Oselargest, you choose 3 cards from your drop, you just put them in a soul. So you have your Persona Rides, just put them in a soul so that way you can soul blast them with Tilligan. You can put your promo in there, whatever you need to put in your soul, you can just refill your soul. And so he's nice. I consider him kind of like the alternate attacker to your main grade 3 attacker. But your main attacker that's not Tilligan is going to be Orions. And I've experimented a lot with the deck trying to figure out what I wanted to do with it. And I decided to build it very similar to Sarazvael, except I think I have her at 4 words, and so I'll have it at 3 for default. With Orions, when you place on Rearguard other than by a unit's ability, as long as you play it in order, you can Soul Blast 1, check top 5, reveal a card with a grade less than equal to your Vanguard, and call it to Rearguard Circle. And then when you take a grade 3 or greater, you can Soul Blast 3, draw a card, and gets 5k on your turn. As far as compared to T-Vault goes, her secondary skill, while it's nice to be able to draw a card from it, Soul Blasting 3 could be pretty heavily. You might be able to do it once or twice in this game, especially if you resolve the other grade 2. But getting 5k is the part that kind of hurts, whereas T-Vault gains like 10k just for free, as long as your opponent's on grade 3 and you have like more than like 4 units total. But what's really cool is there's an order that we play that you can, let's say she's in your soul, it calls it from soul, and then you can immediately do her skill to soul blast and check top 5, and you might be able to get a board. Like you with this deck, you definitely want to be able to see your Tilligans, the main grade 3 attacker, or even the promo. If you haven't seen those two, she's going to be really clutch. She just unfortunately won't do much for the deck until you're on grade 3, just because the best order I think to play with it is also a grade 3, but there is, the chance for other orders over time to come out. There are some really funny ones where, like, let's say you want to go the more budget route without the Tiskars, there is an order that like you can Energy Blast 2 to give your Vanguard the effect that if it like hits, you can call another card out from Soul to give you that a little bit more deck attacking extension. But for now, I do think Orients is a fine fit. Draws you card, gets a little bit of power, and with some other cards, you can make those columns a little bit more impressive. And that's it for your grade 2s. I don't think you need to overwhelm with grade 2s. So let's go ahead and get to the grade 1s. We'll start off with the deck's dedicated grade 1. This is the one that says at the end of the battle, unit is boosted. If your unit was placed in the Rearguard Circle from Soul this turn, you can retire her. Choose a grade 3, also largest from either Soul or Drop, and put it at the bottom of the deck. And if you choose a card, you can choose any player's Rearguard and put it into Soul. So that what's nice about this is you can either use this as like spot removal. So not only are you recycling your Oselargest, that way you can keep searching them every turn, especially considering you're going to get them out of the deck a lot faster just because you're soul charging so much, and you really want to be able to search for them. But also you can use it to force Tilligan into Soul just in case you don't have the other grade 1 promo. So just really nice little spot. I think just at 2 is fine because you're really not going to start doing this until like after Persona Ride turn, if you really even need to. So if you're there, you see it. If you don't, you don't. It's cool. This is the grade 1 that I struggled with the most because I've tried multiple different cards and I just didn't want to over counterblast too much with this deck. Right now I have it to where like you're pretty much only counterblasting with the Vanguard, so you can keep your damage pretty low unless you want to use the Tis cards instead, which that's always an option. So what's going to end up happening is that we ended up getting the grade 1 Dark States Shenri promo when it comes out, the one that's like, if you played an order, you get to put it into Soul and draw a card, or if you have like a certain condition that's met, I don't exactly remember with it. It's the one that Odium players right now in Japan are playing. It's like one of the manga promos. That will replace Brainwash Swirler. Brainwash Swirler, of course, is always great because you can, like, you know, on play a Soul Charge, give him 5k, play another one. That one ends up becoming 18k base, so this one becomes 13 base. But like I said, you don't need a Soul Charge as much, and the power is cool. That's probably the best part. But even that new grade 1 will gain 5k. 13k boosting is like more than enough, and you're never going to put this behind Tilligan, so this will most likely be behind your Vanguard or the other alternate attacking rear guard. But it does also help extend your soul just a little bit more, just that way you can keep drawing cards. But like I said, you just got to manage your resources so you don't deck out. Then this is the new promo that, like, this is one of the December ones that just came out. Haughty Peerage, and she's really cool. Just like the Angel one in Sarazvale, when you place your grade 3 or greater Vanguard, which is why it's important to keep recycling your Vanguards into the deck when you can, you get to Soul Blast one as long as you don't have Soul Blast one as long as you don't have a copy of her on the field. Call her from the drop, and then you get the Energy Charge one, which is why you get the little bit of extra energy that lets you make use of the extra energy that you may build, especially if you're going second. And then on her secondary skill is that at the end of the battle that she boosts a unit named Tilligan, which is your main grade 3 attacker, you actually get to take both of these, put them into Soul, choose another card from your drop, put it into Soul, and draw a card. Then with the combo here is you can actually use Tilligan's skill to Soul Blast 2 cards of different grades, so just go ahead and Soul Blast her and like another card, and it lets you draw a card. And what's cool about this is this can help you loop in your copy of Oselargest. So let's say you Soul Blasted one for Oselargest skill during this battle. So like let's say, you know, your Persona Ride, right? This column is 21. You go to attack, use his skill, you Soul Blast the Tilligans, 21, 31 with Persona Ride, 41, 46,000 with his skill, just for the first attack straight up right there. Then you put them into Soul, you draw a card, you put that copy of Oselargest you just Soul Blasted into the Soul, and then use his skill to Soul Blast her out, so that way she's in the drop prepped for the next turn, and then you draw another card. So it helps you just keep your soul filled, and you keep drawing cards, and you're able to keep looping your combo. So that way when you attack with Oselargest, you can call him back to the rearguard circle again, and then he gets plus 10,000 power from being called up from Oselargest, so he's now 33 during your Persona Ride turn, and then once again when he attacks, another plus 15 again, so it'll actually be 48,000, so it'll be even a little bit bigger without triggers, just from being able to loop that Oselargest into Soul. So she really helps the deck like keep going, at least until, like, of course, the new like support for the decks come out in set 7 eventually. Now these are the orders. Again, these are things that I struggled with, but I do think this order is just really good. You could choose a grade 3 less card from your Soul, call to rearguard, you Soul Charge one, and you call to rearguard circle and give it 5k. So you get that it replaces a card in Soul. Your Soul is a little bit of a toolbox. It also helps you get the Tilligans out of Soul, or like the, you know, like anything else you might need from the Soul. But also if you call Orions from the Soul from this card, then you're able to just check top 5 and call a card, you know, call another card. So this could literally net you 2 units on board, which is like really, really nice. And the unit it calls out gets plus 5k. That little bit of power actually matters, especially like if you're going like first against your opponent while they're on grade 2. Calling Tilligan during your first grade 3 turn, he becomes 18k base, boosted by the grade 1. He'll end up being 21 plus 5, so 23, and then he'll become 48. He'll be 53, I think. So 21, and then plus 5 becomes 23. Plus 15 is 33, 30. Okay, he becomes 38 when he attacks, but 38 for your first attack while your opponent's on grade 2. They just have like no choice but to like take that attack. Or you can even, if you have multiple Tilligans in Soul, you can attack with that Tilligan, Soul Blast the Oselargest, and then like call on attack, call on that Oselargest, give that one the plus 10,000 power, and then you're boosting after that attack with the grade 1. And that column becomes even bigger, which is just astronomical. And then the last order I'm playing is Radiance Caliburn. Radiance Caliburn is just, I mean, you could probably choose a bunch of different things, but I like this one because you can either draw 2 cards, so if you're just needing cards in hand, you can get it. If you just need an extra counterblast, and you need an extra card in Soul, it just puts himself into Soul, the counter charge. It's just extremely flexible. That could be a personal choice. I just end up really liking these for the trial decks, especially since you're like limited. Not every deck is able to have a just draw 2 card pot of greed like Heater's able to. So that is it for like the main deck. Of course, just like with any deck here, you've got your PGs. This is just the normal suite of 3 regular ones, an Elementaria, but of course, you are also perfectly fine just playing 4 of the effect PGs that if it's a second last card, you don't have to discard. So I think those are both very, very viable choices. And then for the trigger lineup, this one's a little bit more simple. I try to do something very similar by putting like fronts and draws. And honestly, I might still go back and try to experiment because like my philosophy is I want to see cards and I need to see pieces. So I want to be able to draw into those pieces. But then because you run through the deck really fast at long games, you can end up decking out. And, you know, last thing you want to see is like, I have 3 cards left in deck and I still have a draw trigger in there. So I might experiment with maybe like doing like 2 fronts and 1 draw, or like, you know, 3 fronts and no draws. But right now I'm at 3 draws, but you could always play them based on personal preference. This one I wasn't able to get quite as creative with the Keter one, just because the Keter one is calling cards from the deck, not the soul. And then lastly, of course, is Valnu, the red over trigger. With all of these decks, except for Cristianos. And Cristianos, you'll still have a rear guard. Actually, yeah, you'll still have a rear guard standing in all of the trial decks. Now, with Brandgate and Stoicheia, you can justify using their in-archetype over triggers because they're just so powerful. The Brandgate over trigger, doubling the crit and power for everything. I lost the prison last night just because of that. Really good over trigger. The Stoicheia over trigger is all of the over triggers combined: front, draw, heal, a crit. Like, you get all of it. Whereas with Valnu, you're able to just choose a unit and it gets the ability to restand. You're always going to have a rear guard that's going to be able to, that's standing rear guard with all of these decks, because, you know, you're calling it from soul, calling it from drop, calling it from hand, however you're doing it. And then you just get yourself the extra attack with this over trigger. It's just, this over trigger I think is really good in the way the decks are being built right now. But of course, again, you could always do the Dark States over trigger because it makes the Vanguard circle threatening, because Oselargest himself becomes 33k without a booster during Persona Ride. You can even, you know, get it bigger with Brainwash Floors and things like that. But alright guys, that is it for my Oselargest competitive deck profile, the best that I could possibly make it at this most time. We'll try to record a fight video. There's not really any lore for Oselargest. Not that there was for like Sarazviel or Austin, but those ones were able to like insinuate a lot more. The Demonic Lords are a very interesting thing that currently exists in the Dark States, because prior the Dark Zone was considered lawless. And then at some point a mysterious Gear Chronicle unit united the land post like the gods disappearing after Gize's defeat, and they were able to unite the country into like a country with like laws. So like that's how like Jejuled is. So you could probably argue that he's probably very much related to Jejuled. He even talks about despair in his like flavor text there. So those are things I find very, very interesting, and I'm sure there is like stuff that you can like infer. The rear guards don't really say much about him, but it's still really cool to see a unique archetype, and he definitely plays more like a Pale Moon deck, which is really cool, being able to call cards from Soul in the battle phase. So I think it's really, really fun, and someday I will get some really cool art sleeves of it. All right guys, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what deck profiles you want to see next, or what fight videos you want to see next. And I hope you guys have a happy new year. And sorry that it was so long to get some content out. We've been really busy at the end of the year, and we hope you have a really great 2025.